You're more than welcome to stand here during the presentation or whatever is more comfortable.
We have thousands of our students and faculty and staff who live in this county, who live in this park right here. We're very interested in what goes on here. We see ourselves as one of the anchor institutions. We're very proud of both our county councilman, John Quirk, and of our UMBC alumnus, right? Jenny O, give them both a round of applause. And the most important point for me to make tonight is that what happens in this county and what happens at the university are connected. We want you to be a part of this. This is your place. Come and visit. Come to other kinds of activities that we have here. Know that we believe in Baltimore County. With that.
Good evening. My name is Councilman Tom Quirk. I think I knew most people in this room tonight. And obviously the councilperson for Southwest Baltimore County, represent close to 120,000 people. Currently I'm chairperson of the Baltimore County Council, one of 7 on the council that we all work on laws and legislation together. And I also chair the Spending Affordability Committee, so I tend to like numbers and I tend to like calculators, so got a little fun. I did want to acknowledge my staff that 3 of the 4 are here tonight. Michael Sparks, and Michael, if you could raise your hand, Michael Sparks over here. Kathy Ingers, where's Kathy? Kathy in the back, Kathy in the back. Margaret Stokes, Margaret, if you could stand up, say hi. And then, of course, Laura Bacon, who couldn't be here tonight because she's in law school and she's studying. But obviously, Mike and Kathy and Margaret and Laura, they really do a lot of the constituent work. So chances are, if you called my office or if you had an issue, you probably have talked to at least one or maybe all 4 of them. And I do appreciate all the work that they do for the council and for the district. Of course, if any of you need anything, you know where to find me. But if you don't, 410-887-0896, or just Google on the web and you can find me as well. And finally, I did want to thank our president, Freeman Hrabowski, who's just an amazing force of nature for UMBC. Thank you so much, Vice President Hrabowski. And of course, thank our new county executive, Johnny Hill. Johnny's really committed to really bringing a lot of public input and transparency to government. He's been a real breath of fresh air I'm working with, and I can't say enough good things about our new county executive, truly working together, diving into the details, not afraid to tackle the tough challenges, and taking them on right away. So look forward to working together, and thank you so much for pulling this all together, and look forward to the next 4 years. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out.
Good evening, everyone. I'm T.J. Smith, I'm the press secretary for Johnny O, and welcome aboard to the final budget season town hall. So I want to first start. I want to give a thank you to Sean Nairn, who's somewhere running around here right now. Where is he? There he is. He has been a member of our communications team who has been instrumental in making sure you can hear us and see us if you're watching live, and making sure these things run, and the outreach team, which helped them in every district and the council people, because this has been a process, and it's a logistical process. So thank you very much for that. And also have a blessed Lent season for those of you who are celebrating. I see a lot of ash out there, so have a blessed Lent season, and hopefully I'm letting the county executive know tonight and giving up my cell phone for Lent. So it's going to be tough for the 16 hours outside of the workplace. But so yeah, right. I'll see how well that works. Probably going to break that after the first day. But a quick few logistical things before I introduce our Debbie Risper from our outreach team. We have microphones on both sides of the auditorium here. When it's time for the opportunity for you to come up to the microphone, you can make your way to the aisleway and state your case, basically. And it might be an opinion, it might be an issue. But we ask that you limit it to 2 minutes or less. And the reason why is we have to honor and respect the building before I go any further, I want to introduce a few other people who are here. Sheila Root from the Baltimore County Central Committee is here. If you can raise your hand. And, Robert Benjamin from the Baltimore County Central Committee is here as well. Former County Executive Don Bowler is here. Katie's still here, yeah. Sean Ford, Legislative Director for Delegate Abersol is here. There he is over there. Rob O'Connor is the IT Director part of the Cabinet of County Executive Johnny O, along with Mike Moeller, Director of PIA, is also here. John McDowell, the President of the Baltimore County Volunteer Fire Department, is here. And Lisa Mack of the Baltimore County School Board. Any other elected officials that I might have forgotten? I'm sorry, Mr. George, from the Baltimore County Central Committee.
Northwest then.
Oh, there we go. All right. Sorry about that, George. My note taker's fired, wherever they are. So with that, I want to introduce Miss Debbie Risper. She's the manager of our outreach team. And Miss Debbie.
Good Wednesday evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Debbie Risper, and I've been charged with overseeing community engagement. It begins here with you. Welcome. We have an outstanding team, a dedicated representative for each district in Baltimore County, ready to assist you. Would my team come forward, please? Our aim is to connect and strengthen the ties in Baltimore County. We have Anne Marie, Michelle, Brad, Mary, Nancy, and who's this guy right here? Oh, Pete. We're here to assist you, so please do not hesitate to call on us.
Okay, so I think it's about time we jump straight into the presentation. The county executive is going to give a presentation here on the board. Hopefully everyone can see it okay. After he's finished with that, he's going to welcome everybody who has a question or comment to come up to the microphones. And again, I just have to stress to please keep your comments to that minimum, and we're going to follow up with you. You just heard Miss Debbie's team. So with that, County Executive Johnny O.
Thank you, TJ, and good evening to everyone. TJ's seen this budget presentation enough that he shouldn't be surprised that our budget guys decided to give up paying people for Lent. So we're going to figure it out. I'm just kidding. I am truly grateful that you all have taken time out of your busy schedules to be here with us. I recognize that this is a rescheduled event. We initially had an event at Catonsville High School, I believe. There was inclement weather and the schools had to close, so we were closed that day. So thanks to BCPS for trying to accommodate us before. Thanks for being flexible. Thank you to Dr. Hrabowski and UMBC for hosting us tonight. I will also apologize. Some of you may have noticed I was giving elbow bumps instead of handshakes coming in. I've come down with a pretty bad bug, and so I'm trying not to share that. But given that this was already rescheduled, it was important for me to still be here with all of you tonight and your councilmen. So thank you for bearing with me. And if I slide off stage for a few moments, I appreciate your indulgence. So, but tonight is about Southwest Baltimore County. It's about District 1. It's about the future of Baltimore County generally. And it's about all of us in this room. This is a night about sharing information, but also, and more importantly, listening, because you drive the priorities of this administration. This is an administration and a councilman who believes that the strength of our community is our community. And so we want to partner with you to understand what the smart investments in our schools and communities are. So the what matters, but also the how matters too. And so that's why we're also trying to open up your government to have these town hall meetings, because accessibility and transparency are really important. They're not just catchphrases. I mean, you have to actually embody them. And so this is, as TJ mentioned, the last of 7 town halls. We've had no less than 200 people at any of our 7 town halls. So it's been overwhelming to see the level of engagement that residents of this county have, and I think have always wanted. And I know it's incumbent on myself and your councilman, the chair of the council, to make sure that we are honoring your time and honoring your voices as we move forward with this budget process and as we move forward in governing these next 4 years. Just to put things in perspective, and you may have heard this before, so don't cheat if you know it, but does anyone know how many people testified on the budget last year? Last year. You're close. That was the year before. So 2 years ago, it was 0. Last year was 2. So just your presence here tonight and your engagement and your involvement just in District 1, we're blowing the roof off the engagement as it relates to our budget process. And so I want to commend, again, all of you, because the what matters, but so too does the how. And as we've learned, budgets are important reflections of our values and our priorities. And so we can't craft a budget without listening to you first. And that's why, as I'm working through my process, I want to hear from you about where we need to prioritize and frankly, where we need to make hard decisions in this process. So I was hoping to give a brief overview of where we are so that can help inform where we're all going together. And we'll start with the basics of basically where your money comes from and where it goes. And so this year, we're projected to bring in about $3.6 billion in the current fiscal year budget. Our current budget runs July 1 through June 30th. So June 30th of this year, our 2019 budget will end, and July 1st, our 2020 budget begins. 3/4 of that $3.6 billion come from the property tax, the income tax, and state aid. So those are the big drivers. In addition to those drivers, we also bring in some money from things like permit fees and other small miscellaneous restaurant inspections and other fees. We receive federal aid for things like transportation and education. And then we also have service taxes. So if you stay at a hotel in Baltimore County, you might pay a hotel motel tax. That's where your money comes from. And then where does it go? Perhaps unsurprisingly, nearly half of every dollar we spend goes to our school system and our K-12 system. That is followed by public works and public safety. If you look at the chart, there's also a non-departmental slice. It's that black wedge at 8%, $285 million. That's things like health insurance for employees and pension benefits for our retired teachers, first responders. So that just gives you some context there. And the other issue that I'd point out that really I think bears attention is we also spend $127+ million on something called debt service. And debt service relates to the capital budget. This is the operating budget, the day-to-day, paying for our employees, paying for health care, paying for the operations of our facilities. The capital money is all of the physical infrastructure and needs. And so as we think about where our capital money comes from, the two biggest sources for our capital construction come from general obligation bonds. Those are the bonds that every 2 years you'll see on your November ballot saying, will you let us borrow this much money for schools, this much money for parks? And that's what we pay back through that debt service. So that $127 million is what we take out of our annual operating fund to pay off those general obligation debts that's used on capital. We also have a fund called the Metro District Fund. That's for things like our water and sewer, where we have a joint venture with the city. And that's something that's paid back from the water and sewer fees. And that is what is a self-sustaining fund. So there's no debt service in our operating budget because the enterprise fund is structured in a way that we're required to basically pay that off as we spend the money and have enough revenue to pay that off. In terms of spending the money as it comes in, the largest spending goes to upgrading our water and sewer infrastructure. And again, unsurprisingly, our second biggest expense in Baltimore County is on school construction and maintenance. And we'll dive a little deeper into our school construction program shortly. So those are pie charts that tell a part of the story. They're helpful in understanding where we are, but they don't really give the full context of the challenges that are still ahead. And now we'll start with where we are on schools. We're currently embarking in a Schools for Our Future program. It's a $1.6 billion renovation, air condition, addition, new school. It was a 10-year program that was meant to continue beyond my administration. And we were trying to eliminate overcrowding in our elementary schools, modernize schools most in need, and put central air in all of our schools. Since 2011, as you'll see, we've air conditioned 59, built 16 new schools, and put in additions at 12. What has that meant for the first district? Those projects, with your councilmen leading the way. You've had 7 newly air-conditioned schools. You've had renovations and additions at Westchester Elementary and Woodlawn High School. And there have been 5 brand-new elementary school buildings here in District 1. So, important work and important progress, but the work isn't done. While we've completed 75 projects, there are 6 currently underway, either being constructed or under contract, but there are also 8 more projects that have yet to be started. Just to finish that set of projects, Baltimore County is going to have to spend $600 million to complete the Schools for Our Future program. Now, we rely on the state to be a partner in this process, and annually they give us about $45 million a year, give or take, on our capital spending. Now, to stay on pace for what we've promised to our communities about schools, the state would have to accelerate their rate of payment. Because otherwise, what we're looking at when we took a look at the numbers is that we would have to push out our spending to wait for the state to be caught up in terms of meeting their investment in our schools. And the promise wouldn't be fully funded for our remaining schools until fiscal 2026. So, I know, having spent time in the classroom, that every year we delay it, we're failing a student and we're failing our teachers. So I've spent my entire time this legislative session, I've had one ask of our state legislature. And I want to say our folks in Baltimore County have been great partners. We are encouraged by what sounds like a lot of interest and potentially some movement coming out of the House of Delegates. But we've asked for $100 million a year for 5 years so that we can not only honor the existing commitments under School for Our Future, but also start thinking about the high school capacity issues, which I know is also very important to a lot of residents in this room tonight. In addition to Schools for Our Future, we've also had a challenge, and this is just a sense of what we can do if we can get our state to step up. Not only will we move forward with our remaining 8 schools, we also can get cracking on those high schools, and there's one in particular that I think, again, a lot of folks are interested in here. In addition to Schools for Our Future, we also have some challenges around our other post-employment benefits, our health and life insurance benefits that we pay to our employees post-retirement. Obviously, we have an obligation to honor those commitments of our employees, but starting in 2015, for the past several years, the county hasn't been funding the actual obligation year over year, and we have been pulling from a fund meant to help support those benefits and that insurance. As it stands now, the fund has $385 million left in assets with $1.9 billion, with a B, of liabilities moving in the future years. Next year's, just for context and perspective, next year we're expecting about a $95 million obligation under just OPEB to meet the obligations for 2020. And this year we've put $5 million towards those liabilities. So obviously that gap is not sustainable, and coming up with a plan for pension and health care is something that's part of the mix as we're having those conversations. We've entered into a 2005 consent decree where we have to spend, and we're programmed out to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to address raw sewage that's been flowing into our streams and rivers in our bay. We have a legal obligation to reduce polluted runoff into the bay, and that was originally funded through stormwater management legislation. Since having that repealed in 2017, we've taken $24 million a year from our Metro Fund, that's self-sustaining water and sewer, to help meet the requirements of our permitting under stormwater runoff. And we've had to prioritize here in Baltimore County to make these things happen so far. We've prioritized public school and public safety in how we've hired and retained people. And so as our county's population grew by 20% over the past 3 decades, we've actually seen our general government workforce decline by 25%. At the same time, we've increased our school workforce by about 50%, and our public safety workforce has about kept pace with population changes. Put another way, public safety and education account for almost 8 out of every 10 Baltimore County employees, which I think is the right focus, but just wanted to put some of our spending in perspective. So where do all these cost drivers leave us? In last year's adopted budget book, the one that says fiscal year 19, just a very small book, we were telling the public that we were projecting that we would end fiscal year 2020, the upcoming fiscal year that starts in July. We were telling people that we believed we would have a $17 million surplus at the end of the year. So, what gives? Because in reality, we're facing an $81 million gap between revenues and expenditures next year. And like most families, the only way that we could balance the current budget without cuts or new revenues would be draining into our fund balance. The council wisely passed a 10% minimum so that we can weather stormy times fiscally, so that we can maintain our coveted AAA bond rating. And so, first of all, we'd have to go through some legal hoops to do it, but it's also like a family drilling into their 401k and their savings to just pay for yearly expenses, and that's not sustainable either. And it surely would have us lose our AAA bond rating, which is a good signal to the public about our fiscal management, and also allows us to borrow money at much lower interest rates and saving money in the process to reinvest in our communities. I'm proud to say that I think our transparency message and our conversations about coming together to figure this out is why the rating agencies reaffirmed this year our AAA bond rating from all three rating agencies. And I want to commend Councilman Quirk for being a big part of those conversations and using his fiscal expertise to do that. And that $81 million, though, just for context and perspective, does not include the money we need for new high schools. It does not include things like teacher pay raises or pre-K expansion or any of the increased requests from the BCPS budget, which I believe is about $90 million or a little bit more over what we spent last year. So we're talking well over $100 million of a gap between where we are and where we want to be, or where we've been requested to be. So why is the reality so different? And this took me some time to finally get there. But if you take a close look at page 94, you have to go to page 94 and look at the very bottom footnote of our budget book. I think you can read what it says. It's assumed that a sizable infusion of new revenue will be approved in fiscal year 20 in order to meet the assumptions of this forecast. Without this new revenue, dramatic reductions in services and fundamental costs will be needed. This is me being as honest with you as I can be as I learn on the job. Now, this explains a lot when you're talking about a big book with a footnote, why we might not know where we are. But now we know why we're here, and we know what's in front of us. And I think it's important to start by having honest conversations. And one thing I will always pledge to you is to be honest about where we are, because failing to do so doesn't serve any of our purposes. So we're $81 million short for next year, and that deficit is projected to grow. Because I thought in the entire state of Maryland, it says nothing of our sustainability, our 232 miles of shoreline with record rainfall and flooding and challenges of climate change. I know that there have been flooding issues here in southwest Baltimore County. We need to invest in a sustainable future. It says nothing of our legal obligation to build more affordable housing across Baltimore County. It says nothing about additional investments in our recreation and parks and other quality of life, making our bike lanes more walkable, our communities more walkable, and putting more green spaces in our communities. But they're all things that we want to do. So the question becomes, how do we do them all together? My first day in office, I issued an executive order. I want to thank County Executive Moeller for chairing it. And Councilman Quirk has put some great people on there with his colleagues. And the Commission on Fiscal Sustainability is taking a top-to-bottom look at our practices here in Baltimore County, finding already in their interim report that there has been a lack of transparency and there has been antiquated systems in place in terms of how we budget and how we invest. So in addition to looking forward to their final work, we are in the process of developing an RFI for a county-wide performance audit. I currently have before the council a proposal to create an Office of Ethics and Accountability to ensure that you have every confidence that there's a concern or a complaint. We have an independent audit outside of the council, outside of the executive office, who can pursue it and track it down. And I'm also a big believer in performance management. When Baltimore City launched CityStat, they were ahead of the curve. That was 20 years ago. We have no real or authentic way to track our outcomes or tell you how we're doing so that you can hold me and this government accountable. We also leave a lot of money on the table. We don't aggressively pursue state and federal grants. We don't partner with the private sector, our nonprofit partners, or our business community, all things that we're tasking our teams to do. Now, in crafting the current budget, our department heads are being told to assume no new revenue and collaborate with each other and eliminate programs that may have outlived their purpose. But I think as we've learned through these conversations that there are still desires and needs within our community. And so we'll continue to go beyond that with you moving forward. On that end, my budget is due April 15th. The council will have to review it and approve it by May 31st, but you have an important role to play in this process. Not just tonight by sharing your thoughts and talking to your neighbors about what we need to invest in here in District 1, but also working with us to tell our legislators.
Okay, if you all want to start lining up on either side of the auditorium and remember what I had mentioned earlier. And again, just a reminder, if you want to state your name so that everyone can, or the outreach team can reach out to you. If you're sitting upstairs in the cheap seats, since you didn't want to splurge to sit down low, feel free to come down and give your comments as well. With that, we're going to turn it over to the microphones and take it from there.
Ready? Okay. So, good evening, everybody. Hi, Johnny. Hi, Tom. So, I put together a surprise for you guys. I collected memories from the campaign for Tom Kirk and Johnny O. And I have it to present, if I could. This is Tom's.
It's sparkly, thank you.
It is. It's golden.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank
And-
you. Thank you.
I know.
It's very nice, thank you.
It's golden, but you guys can't forget, these are the people that put you guys there.
There you go. All right.
So you have it there so you know it. It's
Thank
a
you.
reminder. Oh, picture.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very
And
kind.
now I got my 2 minutes.
Let's say, P.S. we need a new Lansdowne High School.
Yes.
There you go.
I'm sorry. Okay, so 2 minutes, here we go. So it's no secret we want a new Lansdowne High School. But then here's a suggestion. How do we get a new Lansdowne High School, a new Delaney, a new Towson, a new, all the schools we need in our construction to address our issues? We need everybody to engage with our delegation down in Annapolis. We need to get friendly with them. We need to talk to them, give them our suggestions. We need their voices. Their voices are very important. Why? Because I've been following that current commission for the last 2 years since I was appointed by the governor. And every single member there that I have talked to, they've been working really hard on this commission. And I think Baltimore County could be a little louder because they have a piece of pie up there and we should get a good chunk. Part of the operating budget when we're looking at is special education. $125 million for FY20, and I'm sorry, $137 million. PG County got the highest percentage of 15%. Baltimore City came in second with 14%. Montgomery County with 13%. Baltimore County with 12%. And we're having this population of our most vulnerable students grow. And a lot of, like Johnny said, 8 out of 10 families in District 1, I know a lot of families that work for our school system live in our community. And we want to make sure that they continue helping our most vulnerable population in education because they have a right to receive their education. And then my last minute has to do with the roads, okay? Tom, this is for you because Daisy Road, I don't know what's going on there, but it's leaking, the water there, it doesn't even look like a road. It reminds me of when we were stationed out in Georgia, and we have these like gravel roads. That's what it's starting to look like. And we need to also invest in our infrastructure, and that is so important to invest in our infrastructure. And that's how we built Baltimore County to make it better, by having a strong foundation in our infrastructure for our public service. So thank you guys so much. You know, if you're not being transparent, I'm gonna hold you guys accountable. You know I don't go away, and I have a lot of friends. So, New Lansdowne High School, and thank you very much.
Good evening. Is this live? Congratulations on making it through your presentation. I'm Bruce Lehman. I'm from Catonsville. I live on Maple Avenue, which is probably the most neglected street in Catonsville. I've handed a picture to the young lady here of our street during the storm. We are currently being requested, the county's requesting approval for 18 additional homes on our street, which will increase the number of homes by more than a third. The street is 21 feet wide and narrows down to 17 feet. That's 4/10 of a mile long. And it empties onto Frederick Road between the north and south rolling roads. The typical arguments are school overcrowding, traffic, child safety, no sidewalks on our street, it's really an untenable situation. Kids walk the street to get to the bus stop. Bus stop is at Maple Avenue in Frederick. The development is at the very end of the street, projected 190 additional vehicle trips per day, and that would be the entire length of the street. So kids on our street obviously walk to and from the bus stop. They walk the street to visit friends. They play on the street when we have bad weather because the street's almost dry, but quite often it's not. So this is a heads up. We're fighting it, and we definitely don't want this development in our area.
I want to also, go ahead.
Sorry.
I want to also welcome Delegate Eric Ebersol and our Budget Director, Mr. Keith Dorsey, who are also here. Thank you.
And I'll just say, in addition to the feedback, part of the reason we have our outreach staff at the microphones is you will get both an immediate follow-up this week, but also we will do more specific follow-ups as there are issues or concerns raised, so.
Good evening. How you doing? In the beginning, when we started this town hall, I've been going to, how many town halls I've made? Like almost all of them. 5? I made 5 of the town halls. I'm an independent filmmaker. I'm a documentaire. I'm a business owner. And if anybody ever heard of Shorty's Ribs on Falls Road, that was me. I am Shorty. I'm the barbecue guy, all right? All right, I've been in business since 1997. Part of my documentary was documentation. The documentary was about race and racism in Baltimore City, Baltimore County. My store was the only black-owned store on Falls Road. You know what I'm saying? So now I own the lunch counters. I was finishing my movie and my documentary on February the 7th, 2011. I was locked up and charged with terrorism. I'm the guy that put the toilet in front of the Towson courthouse. All right, and that toilet was in my store on Falls Road. That toilet represents how you treat the underclass. You treat us like poo-poo. I'm being nice because I'm supposed to watch my words. Now, my 2-minute thing here is because I went to the county council over a year ago, And I seen Johnny Oleski about a year ago, and I told him about my situation. Johnny kept his word. He said he's gonna give me access to the, he can't really do a lot, but he said he's gonna write me some letters. He wrote me a letter to the Department of Justice to have my case investigated, and he said he's gonna write a letter to the legislators to have my case investigated. I'm out $2.6 million. I'm homeless as we speak because I can't get a house, I can't get a place to stay because of the laws and the rules. Y'all called me a terrorist, and when I came to your office, Miss Ingram's done seen me so many times, she probably know my whatever. So I'm asking you to give me access to the grand jury to have my case heard here in Baltimore County, to get my property back, to get my standing in the community back, to treat me like a man. Because if not, you know how I am. Mic check! I'm very loud. I get my point across. So I'm asking you to take this paper that Johnny Oleski got, and he already acted on it. I came to your office last night at the town hall meeting, and y'all was quiet as a church mouse. Tonight, I need a response. I need a response. All right? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Victoria Goodman, and I live here in Catonsville. And first, let me thank you, Mr. Executive, and also Tom, for hitting the road and bringing Baltimore County to the people. It's really refreshing and very meaningful to all of us here this evening, I think. I'm here representing Patapsco Heritage Greenway. Our mission is to preserve, protect, and restore the environment, history, and culture of the Patapsco Valley. We've been tasked by the state with managing the Patapsco Valley Heritage Area, Maryland's 13th heritage area, the largest portion of which is here in Baltimore County, and it includes the communities of Catonsville, Relay, and Oella. It's a heritage area that's shared across jurisdictional lines with our neighbor to the west, Howard County. We enjoy funding support from both jurisdictions, although in various ways and at differing levels. These funding dollars provide matching funds for management grant that we receive from the state. In turn, the Maryland Heritage Authority, via our organization, provides dollar-for-dollar matching grants to heritage area nonprofit organizations and government entities. I'm going to repeat that, and government entities, for capital projects up to $100,000 and non-capital to $50,000. Tonight, we want to encourage you to take a closer look at how these grants can maybe help be a funding source for projects needed here in Baltimore County, in the heritage area. While we've seen Howard County take advantage of MHAA program, Baltimore County has not yet, and we suggest that you consider ways that maybe you can leverage the benefits our heritage area designation offers Baltimore County. We'd also like to encourage you to take a leading role in creating a greater creative synergy between Baltimore and Howard County by exploring the benefits of possibly a coordinated economic development effort for the Frederick Road Main Street business corridor between Catonsville and Ellicott City. While each Main Street certainly does stand on its own in its appeal, together we believe there are opportunities for a heritage tourism promotional partnership that could benefit both business districts. And finally, we hope your voice will be strong at the state level to bring much needed dollars to Patapsco Valley State Park. It's suffering not only from recent natural disasters, but also from years of state funding neglect and overuse. We've requested $60,000 from both jurisdictions this year. I think the grant is in process or being looked at. Please know that we do fully appreciate the budget challenges you face. They're quite daunting, we understand. And we encourage you to possibly view our request as an investment that can ultimately help you deliver improvements to communities here within the Patapsco Valley Heritage Area. Thanks again.
Good evening. Thanks for being here, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Eric Schwab. I'm a 30-year Catonsville resident. I live on Oakdale. I was glad to hear Tom say that you like to dig into the details, because I'm going to give you what will, in the big scheme of things here, seem a relatively modest request. But it's a modest request that I think by relatively costless action will bring value back into our communities. Back in 2015, the county entered into a partnership with a Florida-based advertising firm to bring ostensibly trash and recycling programs into our communities for the purposes that would be accompanied by advertising on these cans. I say ostensibly because most of these cans are either inappropriately or otherwise illogically placed. In fact, I think you could say that they are placed primarily to achieve the advertising outcomes and nominally to achieve any kind of litter reduction or recycling benefit. I've been in touch with your public works people since back in the fall. The can at the end of our street, right at the Catonsville Junction in Oakdale, was placed, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago. I first blamed Eric Ebersol because I was sure that the State Highway Administration had done it. Then I came around and realized it was the county that had done this to us. The can is this big. It sits 30 feet away from a small trash can, which remains there next to the bus stop. The can is oriented to catch the attention of people coming down Edmondson Avenue, not to maximize recycling value. And I would just simply ask you to take a look at this program. The county receives modest revenue. I suspect that it costs you more to administer the program than you receive in revenues. It's a blight on our community. There are now 95 of these cans around the county. I've taken notice of more of them. You all will take notice of them now if you start thinking about them. They're big, they're advertising blights in the community, and they need to be removed. And so I would ask you, number one, to place a moratorium on any new receptacles until the program has been reviewed. I'd ask you to take a review of the program from a financial basis to see if we're in fact achieving any significant litter reduction or recycling benefit. And I'd ask you specifically to direct your people, because they came out and looked at the one on Oakdale, at the end of Oakdale, and declined to move it over to the bus stop. At the very least, just put it the place where people will use it, as opposed to the place where it's just a greater eyesore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jim Himmel. I'm a longtime resident here in Catonsville, and I wear a number of community volunteer hats. This evening, I'd like to use less than 2 minutes to basically talk about one of the hats that I wear, and that is as the Vice President of the Catonsville Community Conservation Association. And this is one of the groups that's working to reestablish our Catonsville Community Center in the historic elementary school on Frederick Road. And may I ask if you're a group representative or an individual here tonight that's interested in seeing that community center back in the historic school building, could you please stand up and join me in my presentation? Or raise your hand. There we go. Okay, so it's more than just me. And 25 years ago, the CCCA was at the center of this community's successful effort to landmark the historic Bloomsbury School building, saving it from planned demolition for a new elementary school. And 5 years later, eventually witnessing the $14 million building renovation for our Catonsville Community Center. And if you're really old, you remember all that. Right? In 2014, the CCCA lobbied against the county plans for another new elementary school incorporating the historic Bloomsbury School building and eliminating the $14 million Catonsville Community Center there. The county promised that the $14 million community center at Bloomsbury would be replaced at the surplus Catonsville Elementary School on Frederick Road. And as quoted in the Baltimore Sun on July 25th, 2014, Tom, right now, the question is, do we keep the Catonsville Elementary School the way it is and convert it for use as a community center, or demolish the building and build a new community center? Thanks, Tom. In early 2017, the CCCA again facilitated a successful community action to save the historic Catonsville Elementary School building from demolition by the county by placing it on the Baltimore County preliminary landmark list. All right, so we, as a community, went through this action twice.
All right, you're coming up on 3 minutes, too.
Sorry. once for Bloomsbury and again for Catonsville Elementary. Last point, the CCCA joins with the Catonsville Rec and Parks Council, the Baltimore County Arts Guild, and many, many other groups and residents of this community to ask this administration to finally deliver on the promise made to the community in 2014 and reestablish the Catonsville Community Center at this historic elementary school building on Frederick Road. Thank you.
And I just want to acknowledge Delegate Charles Sidnor, who also just came in. Appreciate you being here.
Good evening, and thank you for the town hall meeting. My name's Craig Ring. I live at 1700 Frederick Road at the corner of Overhill and Frederick. I've lived there for 35 years. About 33 years ago, the county came and filled in the gutter a couple houses up above me, and I started getting water coming down through my yard. It actually cut through my yard, and I wound up building my own curb out of railroad ties to keep that water out. And then about 20 years ago, the county came and paved that road. And when they paved it, it was supposed to have been ground down, but they just put a crown in it. And when they put the crown in it, I really became a stream. I have a stream that runs through my yard. And to this day, I keep dumping rocks and stone into the places that have been cut in my yard. Over those 35 years that I've been or have had that problem, I've approached every county councilman and I've not gotten any results. I've even had county engineers come out and look at it, and what they've told me is that they don't have any money for it and it has to be done for a study, and that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not an engineer, but I can show you in that yard where it's cut. And they keep telling me that we don't have any money. But Baltimore County has a lot of money to put islands and trees on Edmondson, so they must have enough money that they could fix that little water problem that's on my street. I know that if I lived on Delaney Valley Road, it would have been taken care of quicker than you can blink your eye. And my thing is that if we do something, we need to do it. And you talk about saving the bay. That stuff from the road keeps going down. It goes down the bay. And I'm at the point, yes, I can do certain things, but I'm tired of cleaning up for the county. And I get tired of hearing the county engineers tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. But thank you. Oh, one other thing. This Baltimore County, Catonsville Senior High School, it's not fair to the taxpayers of Baltimore County to have Baltimore City residents come to that school and use fictitious addresses. We pay enough county taxes for education, and that does drain us, and it also puts a hamper on kids. Thank you very much.
Just one point I wanted to make to the comments about the roads and the projects. We're not there yet, but this sort of gets to the transparency. One of the things we're trying to get to is a place where we actually start quantifying what all of our assets are, what all of the needs are with the roadways, with the other projects, so we can start producing a list and putting realistic timelines so communities